Senior Vice President for Networking at NVIDIA. Thank you, Gilad, for joining us live.
Yeah, thank you, Vlad.
I know you had to adjust your travel schedule, and I think I remember you still have a flight to catch. So we will only spend 15 minutes. But I think, Daryl brought in the key question. When is the adoption starting? Because we've been talking about CPO for a decade. And some of our friends who we all know, we're not going to name them, are making fun of CPO, saying, oh, it's a technology that's always 2 years from deployment, so wide adoption. But on a serious note, is Gilad, why do you think now is actually the right time? And this time it's actually for real, maybe even less than 2 years away from wide adoption?
Yeah, so first, I think that anyone that says that CPO is 2 years from adoption, it probably needs to go back and say 2 years ago, because it's essentially now moved to full production, and we're going to see a good amount of deployments as we going towards the end of the year. So a couple of things here. First, we already shipped some CPO switches to some of close partner of us, and they've been deploying the first CPO systems. We have deployed internally within NVIDIA AI Factories CPO switches, and they actually demonstrate great performance. So it's not just that we see the power reduction on that CPU infrastructure, but much greater resiliency. We're seeing an order of magnitude better MTBI, for example, and so forth. So the technology that was spoken for many years is now going to mass production, full production, and we're going to see a good take of that as we progressing this year. So why CPO? Or why now? So when we look on AI factories, obviously the growth in the scale of AI factories is amazing. A couple of years back, we were talking about tens of thousands of GPUs in a AI factory. Now we're talking about hundreds of thousands of GPUs. The number is growing. We're looking towards a million scale GPU. Bandwidth is growing very quickly. So from generation to generation, the scale-out network is doubling in its capacity. Scale-up network has 10x bandwidth requirement versus scale-out. And as scale-up, for example, goes beyond the rack, we already talked about scaling up to hundreds and even thousands of GPUs, which will require multiple racks in order to form a scale-up GPU. Scaling out obviously runs long distances, and as was mentioned before, copper is the best, and we want to use copper as much as we can. But when distance require optics, it's going to be optics. There is a great amount of optics in AI factories, and the power consumptions of optics now becomes a really meaningful number. Power is the main limiting factor of the compute capacity in AI factory, and compute capacity means how many tokens I can generate. And the amount of tokens I can generate actually mandate how much money I can make from tokens. And therefore, you want to minimize power wherever you can. Now, it's not just coming around optical network, it's coming around everything. For example, we are moving towards 100% liquid cooling. And it's not just liquid cooling, we're actually doing 45 degrees of liquid cooling, which will save chillers, and we can save power around that. The same goes on the optical network. Optical network today, just on a scale out infrastructure, is reaching around 10% of compute capacity. So if I can increase 10% of GPUs or 10% of CPUs, I can generate many more tokens, and I can actually generate much more money from my AI factory. So that's why. That's why it's now. That's why it's now. Of course, we saw that coming, and CPO is being in works in NVIDIA for a couple of years, in a sense. And of course, in order to make sure that the CPO will go to mass production, we need to do some things differently, which starts all the way from the optical engines to packaging to how do you do fiber arrays to custom laser sources and so forth. And just to note is that before NVIDIA brings any technology to production, we must make sure that there is a huge capacity that is built behind it, that we can serve or use the technology in mass capacity, else we cannot do it or we cannot touch it. So we work with the ecosystem of partner for us. We made a good amount of investments in different forms and ways in many of our ecosystem partners, and CPO is now moving to full production, and we're gonna see a lot of CPO being installed in many AI factories around the world.
Good, good. Thank you. So, what do you think about the standardization activities? We had two sessions on that at this conference. Do you think the industry is going in the right direction?
Standardization is always a good thing, and NVIDIA does participate in many MSAs and consortium and driving from our experience. Um, there are cases that you need to develop technology and run very quickly because standardization may take longer, and then you release that technology out there. But as you release technology, you are gaining more experience, and then you can actually enabling more elements into standardization. We love standardization bodies, by the way. We appreciate standardizations and we participate in many organizations and will continue doing so.
Right. A lot of those activities are around near-packaged optics or NPO. What is your opinion about NPO? Do you think it has a place in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so I heard many good presentations throughout this event, and I was here from the beginning. So I want to thank everyone that was presenting here. I think there is great content. I don't think that there is a debate about NPO versus CPO or NPO versus CPX versus CPO. We believe that there is a room for all of those options. CPO, from integration perspective and the performance it's going to deliver, it's probably second to none. And if I'm looking on the beta rate capabilities of doing the full integration on CPO, it's great. And NPO gives ability or flexibility, for example. It's not just flexibility if I want to change an optical engine or choose another optical engine. Even if I look on options to build a hybrid system, that may have some optical connections in some ports, may have copper or PCB on other ports and so forth. NPO can actually be a good option for that. So CPO has a place, and when we want to get the maximum performance and the lowest power consumption and so forth, CPO is a good way to go, and we invested in CPO, and CPO is now moving to mass production. We will also use NPO in different aspects for different functions and so forth, and potentially CPX in a sense. So every technology, NPO, CPX, and CPO will have its place and will have system that will use those technologies. So I don't see that one versus the other. I think both will coexist.
Right, right. Do you see any parts of the industry where that are kind of lagging behind? Is there where where do you think most of the improvements need to happen?
Well, I think that we're just in the beginning, okay, which is a good thing, and because of the scale of air factories, because of the increase in the dimensions of optical networks, now there is a huge focus on that, and it's a good thing. There is more ways or future capabilities of doing further integrations of different elements, and some of those ideas were discussed here. There is a great development of new technologies, new capabilities, and we're happy to see that because I think that we're probably going to use many of those. Um, of course, we're not going to talk too much about what we plan to do in the next few years. In a sense, we need to wait and see what NVIDIA is going to announce, when it's going to announce. But definitely there is a future capabilities of further integrations of different elements into the system, increasing performance, reducing power per bit and so forth. And some of those new ideas were discussed today.
Right, perfect. Well, thank you, Gilad. I know you have a plane to catch, so I appreciate you staying late and sharing your perspective. Just